Hi everyone, and thanks for being with me. Now. I've got to be honest. This is the third time, or is it the fourth time? It's been a lot of times I've made an effort to make this particular video, and there are often reasons why I won't send a video off after I've done it. The first reason is they're crap, and so I make quite a few videos actually, and then choose not to send them because I don't like either what I said or the content or whatever. And in this particular case, it was a technical issue and I kept on getting it wrong. I don't know. And hopefully now it's corrected itself. And when I go to edit it, it will look okay. Who knows? And it doesn't really matter because if you don't ever get to see this, it means I haven't put it up and you will never know. But this is actually about Senator Fatima Payon and what's happened in the Australian Senate or in the Australian federal government in relation to this and how it's being spun in order to demonise who she is, to talk about Muslims in a derogatory and unhelpful way, and to discuss an issue which has been with us for years, and that is the influence that certain religious movements have had in Australia. And as we're discussing this, many of you won't remember, but historically, this is a fact. In 1955, a group of disaffected Roman Catholics decided to leave the Labor Party because the Labor Party was not meeting their particular needs at the time. So they formed a group called the Democratic Labor Party. And they were run by a guy by Salmantora, someone will correct me on that. But they then became sort of a minor party, but they were specifically representing a religious view, and it was not the first. There have been others, I think, but particularly that because they split with the Labor Party in order to represent their view. Now there is a similarity, I guess, in a bizarre sort of way with Fatima Payon because the senator has decided to split with the Labor Party because she disagrees with their lack of enthusiasm about discussing and talking about the genocide in Gaza and also about, obviously, putting some sanctions against Israel, standing up against Israel, and restricting trade, in fact, with Israel. So this is kind of like the Greens' perspective, but certainly one which we need to consider and I think is a reasonable perspective to have. So Fatima disagreed. She, on a moral issue, she chose to vote against a government's amendment to a Greens bill around recognising Palestine. As a result, she contravened caucus rules. Now, what this has done, though, is it's raised a whole host of issues about what we need to think about in terms of specific interest groups, cultural groups, and how we believe they may or may not influence elections in the future. And I think both the Labor and Liberal are very conscious of how this is going to affect them. And I'll play a clip in a moment of Peter Dutton talking about how he thinks this will manifest itself and therefore what are his fears in relation to this. And they become, even though it doesn't talk about them as fears, they become quite evident actually as to what specifically they may be. But I want to go first to, before we play that clip, I want to go first to my friend Andrew Bolt. Now, that's the primary reason why I'm going to Andrew is that I do love this man. I think he offers so much in terms of fodder for people like myself to discuss the moronic version of the right, which is emphasised through morons like Andrew Bolt. So I'm just going to have a look at something he says in relation to this and let me know what you think.
But first, Muslim Senator Fatima Payon. Today quit Labor, the party that got her elected, and she'll now sit as an independent for now. And Australian politics just got more dangerous.
Now, we need to, so this is decoding Sky News and Andrew Bolt. So what is there about politics? This is the question we need to be asking ourselves. What is there about politics, which specifically is the government of the day, which is the Labor Party, and that's what he's referring to. He's not talking about politics in general. He's not being apolitical. He's really talking about the Labor Party. So what has got more dangerous? This is the question. He's made the statement. So this is the question we need to be questioning.
The ongoing genocide in Gaza is a tragedy of unimaginable proportions. It is a crisis that pierces the heart and soul. Witnessing our government's indifference to the greatest injustice of our times makes me question the direction the party is taking. Sadly, I do not believe our principles align with those of the leadership of the Labor Party. With a heavy heart, but a clear conscience, I announce my resignation from the Australian Labor Party.
Okay, now some of Payman's colleagues claim she told them her decisions on backing Palestine above Labor, etc., they were guided by God or Allah.
Now, here we go. So, Fatima Payon's decision expected as caucus colleagues expressed concerns over claims she was being guided by God. Now, I don't know whether, I don't know whether they would suggest that Peter Dutton, if Peter Dutton guides them, he's also God. That's a possibility. Who knows? But at the end of the day, she talks about this, and I think they have this clip here, and I'll play that for you in a moment, where actually Fatima does talk about the fact this is a decision that is made on values and principles. If you want to say it's by God, so be it. Say it by God. But if my God are ethics and principles and the betterment of mankind and about looking after and caring for other people and being concerned and empathetic about what's happening for other people, and you want to call that God, then call it God. Who gives a shit? But in her case, I think that's what she was doing. She was really just abiding by her ethics and her principles.
And that she left it in God's hands. Well, today she didn't deny that when asked about that. But she got huffy and said, no, it's a question of humanity.
Oh, for God's sake, she didn't get huffy. She just explained it for the way she saw it. That's all it is, Bolt. You're
Can you elaborate, Senator, on what the suggestion that you're being guided by God in your decision making? And we campaigned on sort of other Islamic Muslim type of issues.
I would firstly, I'd like to know what those Islamic and Muslim type of issues are. What's he figure? It's a stupid question, and I think she responds to it quite appropriately.
I don't know how to respond to that question without feeling offended or insulted, that just because I'm a visibly Muslim woman that I would only care about Muslim issues. This topic on Palestinian recognition, but Palestinian liberation is a matter that has impacted everyone with a conscience. It is a matter that's not just a Jewish versus Muslim issue. This is a matter about humanity.
Now, I don't know if Bolt heard that, but as you said, this is a matter about humanity. If you believe that God has informed you with those principles, so be
I worry about Payman's decisions for several reasons, and
I'll tell you like the way he does that. I'm worried about Payman's decisions for several reasons, because I'm important and she isn't, because she's a woman who's a Muslim, and we should never believe women to start with, and of course we should never believe a woman. So that's the way he talks. So
not sure I believe at all some of the things she said in a press conference today, explaining why she couldn't follow Labor's rules, had to leave. Now, the rules, of course, say, Labor's rules, that its MPs have to vote as they collectively decide. You can't rat and vote your own way, which Payman did by voting with the Greens for the immediate recognition of a Palestinian state. And that's the big issue here, why she's leaving. And let me go through my problems with what Payman has done and said. Now, first, her preaching of victimhood today. No one knows victimhood like a Muslim.
Okay, so here we go. So this is Bolt's stick. This is the thing that gets him excited, gets him up in the morning, gets him to talk about other people in a most deconstructive way. And that is, unconstructive way I meant, is that everybody who cites what has happened to them in their lives and uses that to inform themselves about who they are, they talk about that, then they're claiming victimhood. So anybody who's experienced childhood sexual abuse, who as an adult talks about that, then clearly they're into victimhood. So a woman who has been abused by her partner, threatened to be killed, and then talks about that experience is indulging in victimhood. And this is kind of where he comes from. It is pathetic, but this is who Andrew Bolt is, unfortunately. And so it does bring up this issue about religion. So I wanted to play a bit about a certain person by the name of Scott Morrison, who had a very strong religious perspective about almost everything. And so there's this piece I found which actually talks, I won't play all of it, I'll play some of it just to give you a sense as to what I'm talking about. But this is where a belief system, a religious belief system, impacts the way you define the world, which, remember, is not the way everybody defines the world. But the religious right, the Christian nationalists, want us to think that their version of how the world should be defined is the only version. And as a result of that, we should all fall in line with that version, and we should be controlled to such an extent that we accept it. And this is wrong. This is, in fact, this sort of shit's verging on fascism. So let's hear what Scott Morrison has to say about this.
Right from the beginning of Scott Morrison's term as Prime Minister, his faith has been front and centre.
I have always believed in miracles.
Here are 4 aspects of the PM's faith that may shed some light on his politics.
What's a miracle? A miracle is what the world can't see, but God can see. That's what a miracle is.
Morrison is aligned with the Horizon Church, which is part of the broader Pentecostal movement that first emerged in the United States. The belief that miracles really can and do happen is a central tenet of Pentecostalism. While many in the media and public use the term miracle loosely in referring to his poll-defying win, the Prime Minister may actually see his election as an act of God.
And then I wonder how he sees his unelection and his election defeat, because that in his term would be a matter of God as well.
Stemming from miracles is belief in the divine providence, or simply the belief that everything past, present, and future is part of God's divine plan. This in part may be an influence on the Prime Minister's reluctance towards increasing action on combating climate change. As an existential threat, if the end of the world through climate change is part of God's plan, there is little that we need to or can do about it.
I can't fix the world. I can't save the world. We both believe in someone who can.
And he certainly wants to know how to save the world. And I won't bore you with the rest of that. But what I do want to also focus on is the fact that there's this other story, not quite a story, but there is a comment that Dutton made, which really needs to be looked at in this context as well. And when we think about how these politicians are dividing us, and I put Albanese in that category on this issue, because I think he's appalling. But when we look at some of the things that Dutton says, we must feel, or we should, I reckon, feel ashamed.
I made some comments during question time yesterday that were talking about able to explain or trying to think about this, like the story or a bundle. What did you make of that comment?
Oh, look, I think it was a political play by the Prime Minister. What you know about Anthony Albanese is that he's a lifer. He's been in Parliament for almost 30 years. He's a tricky political operator. There's no question about that. And what he's tried to do here is to spike the story of Fatima Payon, who clearly is going to go out into another party or into some independent, collaboration. I don't know what her plan is, but clearly the Prime Minister does. And I think he's trying to spike that story. I think that's what's happened there. I think what it does demonstrate is that the Prime Minister, if he's in a minority government in the next term of Parliament, it will include the Greens, it'll include the Green Teals, it'll include Muslim candidates from Western Sydney. It will be a disaster. If you think the Albanese government is bad now, wait for it to be a minority government with the Greens, the Green Teals and Muslim independents. That is not the formula.
So there he is, demonising the possibility that you could have the Greens, the Teals, and also a Muslim group. And so the inference is that, I mean, as much as he hates the Greens and as much as he despises the Teal, I'm sure he hates the Muslims even more, because they represent a significant threat to him, particularly in Western Sydney. Seats that probably the Liberal Party will never win anyway, again. But certainly it is a mindset he has that somehow these people he deems as evil just because they're Muslims. Yet when we look at the stuff around Morrison, I see some of the stuff that Morrison does and thinks about in terms of his own religious convictions as evil, And yet, Muslims believe go across a spectrum from those radical right-wing terrorist type people to the majority who are loving, caring, thoughtful, empathetic individuals like Fatima Payon. And, in the Christian faith, we see those right-wing crazies who are homegrown terrorists living in America, living in Australia, and we tend to ignore the fact that we have terrorism looming here as well, among some of these crazies, more so in the US, of course, and in Europe than here, but nevertheless bred from, developed from, propagated by right-wing religious beliefs. So we have them in every aspect of religion, I guess. So we need to be mindful of the fact that these people are endeavoring to spread beliefs about a certain group of people that are completely unfounded, but these beliefs are based on their own irrational prejudices. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. Like my video if you want to, make a comment if you want to, doesn't have to be a good one, who cares? But certainly I ask you to subscribe to my channel for further notifications. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.